It was 2:07 a.m. when the emergency call came through the dispatcher's line. A neighbor reported strange noises, what she described as a violent argument and possible break-in at the house on Harbor Lane. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars from the Lakeview Police Department were dispatched. The quiet street glowed under dim streetlights, the air thick with fog and silence. Inside the house, Commander Marcus Hayes, a decorated Navy SEAL officer, had just returned from a 6-month deployment. His wife, Alicia, had woken up to greet him. Neither of them knew that, within minutes, their peaceful reunion would turn into tragedy. Bodycam footage later revealed the officers arriving with guns drawn. The call had been marked as a possible domestic disturbance, a code that heightens tension and alertness. Through the window, one officer claimed to see a silhouette holding what looked like a weapon, later confirmed to be a cordless hairdryer. The officers shouted commands. Alicia, startled and confused, stepped forward. 3 shots were fired in rapid succession. The time between their arrival and the gunfire was just 23 seconds. When the smoke cleared, Alicia lay motionless on the kitchen floor. Marcus was forced to the ground and handcuffed, screaming her name. The officers didn't yet know who he was, a Navy SEAL commander who had faced war zones around the world, now facing one on his own doorstep. Police lights painted the street in red and blue as neighbors stepped out in shock. Within minutes, the entire area was sealed off with yellow crime scene tape. Marcus sat on the curb, wrists bound, his face empty, his uniform still folded in his bag inside. The man who had rescued hostages overseas couldn't save the woman he loved most. Detectives arrived, questioning the visibly shaken officers. "We thought she had a gun," one muttered repeatedly. At the hospital, Alicia was pronounced dead on arrival. By morning, local news headlines read, "Officer involved shooting leaves woman dead in Lakeview." But what no one yet knew was that her husband was a highly decorated Navy SEAL, holder of the Silver Star. When Marcus finally spoke, his words were few. She was holding a hairdryer. That sentence would soon become a symbol of everything broken in the system. Marcus Hayes wasn't just another name in a headline. He was one of the Navy's most respected operatives, a man of precision, discipline, and restraint. He had led missions in Somalia, Yemen, and Afghanistan. Yet, despite surviving the world's most dangerous operations, nothing had prepared him for the war that awaited him at home. When word of the shooting reached his commanding officers, the Navy immediately offered support. Lawyers, liaisons, and counselors arrived, but Marcus refused all interviews and media appearances. "I don't want sympathy," he said quietly. "I want accountability." His fellow SEALs, hardened by years of service, broke down watching the footage. "Marcus never loses control," one teammate said. "Seeing him scream like that, it broke something in all of us." The Navy launched its own inquiry, while Marcus began his own investigation, collecting every detail, timestamps, radio calls, camera angles. He wasn't seeking revenge, he was building truth. The official investigation began the following day. Both officers were placed on administrative leave, a standard move after shootings. The district attorney promised a full and transparent review. But Marcus had heard bureaucratic promises before. Investigators reconstructed the scene. The officers claimed they saw a metallic object in Alicia's hand, illuminated by light. But forensic evidence proved otherwise. The hairdryer was white plastic, not reflective at all. Neighbors testified that they hadn't heard any argument before the gunfire. Marcus hired his own legal team, former military lawyers turned civilian rights advocates, who unearthed a crucial fact. The dispatcher had noted that the house belonged to a Navy officer, recently returned home. That message had been ignored by the responding units. When leaked footage surfaced, showing Alicia raising her hands moments before being shot, outrage exploded nationwide. Protests began outside Lakeview PD. The police chief called it a tragic misunderstanding, but Marcus called it negligence. The story went viral within days. National outlets replayed the video endlessly. "Unarmed woman shot by police," the headlines read. Talk shows and analysts debated every frame. The nation wanted answers. Marcus, meanwhile, became an unwilling symbol of grief and justice. Veteran organizations, civil rights groups, and citizens rallied under the banner #Justice for Alicia. But Marcus avoided cameras. They're turning her death into content, he told a friend. I just want the truth. Behind the noise, legal battles intensified. The office's lawyers argued that split-second judgment justified their actions. But experts disagreed. This wasn't fear, said one former FBI negotiator. It was poor training and panic. 6 weeks later, Marcus's lawyers received a copy of a dispatch audio file, supposedly routine. But inside it was something shocking. Seconds before the gunfire, an officer's voice said, "Looks like she's got a gun." Later analysis confirmed the voice belonged to an officer still outside the house, someone who never saw Alicia. That unverified claim had sparked the panic. Forensic specialists confirmed that single phrase directly led to her death. Marcus listened to the recording in silence. "That's the moment she died," he said softly. His attorneys filed a civil rights lawsuit, citing reckless behavior and breach of protocol. The department refused to comment, but leaked memos suggested internal efforts to control the narrative. For Marcus, the discovery turned tragedy into a mission. This was no longer an accident, it was negligence caught on tape. 9 months later, the case reached trial. The courtroom was filled with journalists, veterans, and grieving families. The atmosphere was heavy. The prosecutors played the footage in silence, the yelling, the confusion, the 3 gunshots. Then they played the dispatch audio. "She's got a gun." The room fell still. The defense argued fear and human error, claiming the officers believed their lives were in danger. But the prosecution presented the white hairdryer, still plugged in. The jury watched Marcus testify. "I've spent my life defending this country," he said. "I never thought I'd have to defend my family from those sworn to protect us." His voice didn't break, but the courtroom did. Veterans wept openly. After 3 weeks, the verdict came swiftly: guilty of negligent homicide and reckless endangerment. The decision made headlines nationwide. But for Marcus, justice brought no peace. "Alicia's gone," he told reporters. "There's no victory here." The aftermath was polarizing. Some called it justice, others called it betrayal. Police unions protested. Lawmakers proposed new policies requiring confirmation before firing a weapon. The Lakeview Police Department launched a full-scale reform program, the Hayes Protocol, focused on decision-making under pressure. Marcus refused to join. "You don't heal a wound by naming it after the victim," he said. Yet, even from a distance, his tragedy reshaped training across the country. Letters poured in, from widows, veterans, and citizens thanking him for his courage. He kept them in a small wooden box labeled Alicia's Voice. Months later, a documentary crew approached him. At first, he refused. But then he said yes, on one condition: tell it exactly how it happened. No filters, no dramatics, just truth. When Shots at Midnight, The SEALs' Silent War premiered, it reignited the national conversation. Millions watched as Marcus told his story calmly, without anger. "Accountability," he said, "isn't anti-police, it's pro-human." His quiet composure struck a chord. Across departments nationwide, new training models emerged. The story that began in tragedy became a movement for awareness. 2 years later, Marcus retired from active duty. The Navy held a final ceremony in his honor. Flags waved, medals gleamed, but his eyes stayed on the empty seat beside him. Afterward, he moved to a coastal town, far from cameras and headlines. There, he founded the Alicia Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to preventing police-related family tragedies. "It's not about revenge," he explained. "It's about prevention." Through his program, he began teaching recruits about clarity under stress, empathy under fear, and restraint under pressure. "You can't train courage," he often said, "but you can teach understanding." Slowly, his grief transformed into purpose. What began as heartbreak became a lifelong mission. The tragedy that had shattered his world now shaped his calling, to ensure no other family faced what his did that night. Years passed. The story of Alicia Hayes lived on in documentaries, law schools, and training centers. Students studied the case as a landmark moment in police reform. Every year on the anniversary of her death, Marcus visited her grave with a single white lily, and a glass case holding the same hairdryer she had held that night. "They see evidence," he whispered once to a journalist. "I see the last normal moment we had." The cemetery was quiet, the sunrise warm, his reflection faintly mirrored in the glass. She was unarmed, he said softly. But her truth was her weapon, and it still fires in the hearts of those who refuse to forget.